الذين آمنوا لما تقولون ما لا تفعلون كبر مقتا عند الله أن تقولوا ما لا تفعلون. Or you who believe, why you say what you do not do. كبر مقتا عند الله. المقت is شدة الغضب. The anger of Allah is intense upon those who say what they don't act upon. So this is a serious matter, and what is meant by speech and actions, or al-qawl wal-amal, which is something that we hear even in the definition of al-iman. What is the definition of al-iman according to the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Anyone remember? Al-iman qawlun wa amal, speech and actions. Al-iman qawlun. We need to memorize this, inshallah. What is the meaning of al-iman? Qawlun wa amal. We're not talking about the linguistic meaning of it. The definition of it that the people of Ahl Sunnah are upon, that al-iman qawlun wa amal, yazidu wa yanqus, yazidu bil-ta'a wa yanqus bil-ma'siyah. So al-iman, speech and actions. Speech is part of al-iman. What a person say and actions are part of al-iman. But they also include in the speech is the speech of the heart. Qawlul qalb is al-i'tiqad. Qawlul qalb, as we talked about that many times before, is the belief in the heart, the pillars of al-iman. This is the speech of the heart. And there's the speech of one's tongue. This is also part of al-iman, to recite the Quran, to enjoy the good, to forbid the evil, and so on. And there is the amal, the actions of the heart, and the physical actions. But what is meant by al-qawl wal-amal in this is what we say versus our actions. And we say, and again this is when someone is upon the deen of Allah, when a person is saying things, as Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ أَحْسَنُوا الْقَوْلَ كُلَّهُمْ. The people indeed, they perfected their speech, all of them. We all talk about very nice things. Even when we're sitting here, talking about قال الله, قال رسول الله, قال الصحابة, mashallah, perfect speech. But does the speaker act upon what he says? Do we act upon what we say? And there should not be any gap in between. The gap between al-qawl wal-amal, in principle, it's called what? If you ask anyone, when someone's speech, when someone talk is different than his actions, what is it called? Hypocrisy. People, they say that this is hypocrisy. And this is the seed of al-nifaq. What's the munafiqeen? What's the hypocrites? What is the essence of hypocrisy? Is what's in their hearts is different than what they say and they act. So they say things. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ وَإِنْ يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ. If you see them, you would like how they look. And if they say, you would listen to what they say. MashaAllah, beautiful speech. So anyone, everyone, as Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, he said, إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ أَحْسَنُوا الْقَوْلَ كُلَّهُمْ. All of the people, they perfect the speech, all of them. Anyone can perfect their speech. Everyone can say the best words about oneself or whatever. But then here is the test and the trial. فَمَنْ وَافَقَ قَوْلُهُ فِعْلَهُ فَقَدْ أَصَابَ حَظَّهُ أَوْ كَمَا قَالَ. Whoever his speech wafaq, that means it goes, coincides, aligns with his speech, aligns with his actions, he got his share. He got his, this is the fortune of this life, he got his share. And وَمَنْ خَالَفَ قَوْلُهُ فِعْلَهُ. What happened if someone's the opposite? Whoever his speech is different than his actions, he said فَقَدْ وَبَّخَ نَفْسَهُ. He had condemned himself. You know, when someone insults himself, this is exactly what we do to ourselves. We say one thing and then we don't act upon what we say. We're insulting ourselves. Because we're insulting ourselves when we say, he is condemned, he is evil, he is this, the one that does this. And then a person does it. He's insulting himself. And the same thing if a person, we have to perfect our salah, perfect our ibadah, and so on. And then he doesn't do it. He's insulting himself. فَقَدْ وَبَّخَ نَفْسَهُ. And this is how the ayah says. And this entire deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can look at it from that perspective. We talk too much. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the speech was much less. But they acted upon what has been said. And the ayat of the Quran, the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, found, if it's correct to say, a heart that is ready to accept these words eager to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them. So their speech was less and their actions was much more. And that's why they used to count. And this is something that is stated among or upon the Salaf radiallahu anhum. This is something that is well known to them. That كانوا يعدون أقوالهم من أعمالهم. They used to count their speech from their actions. They did not have this separation between both. So speech is actions because it's either something good for a person to be rewarded for or something bad that he's forbidden from doing. But also the things that is good, we have to make it upon actions, otherwise it does not benefit the person. And this is basically what al-ilm is. So when we always look back and see how Salaf al-Salih, the righteous early generations of Islam that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to follow their way, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the Tabi'een and Tabi'i Tabi'een, when we see this, you find great examples of how their speech and actions were aligned with one another. And if there's a gap or any slip of a tongue or something like this, they always constantly repent to Allah. We're not talking about perfect human beings, but a person has to constantly repent and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. Because of the time, if we just mention some of the examples, and one aspect only, that if you, and you probably heard most of these hadith anyway, that you, some of the hadith or many of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you would find the narrator of the hadith, he narrates a hadith. And then check the narrator, how did he act upon the hadith that he narrated. You would find him the first to apply it on himself first. They were not just conveying the message, even though this is a good deed by itself. And a person should convey the message no matter what. Even if he looked down upon himself and he sees, oh, I'm not that good, there's no such a thing. If a person is able to convey the truth, mashallah, do it. And don't let the shaitan whisper, oh, you're not good, you're not in that state of goodness, so stay away from everything. No, if a person is able to, maybe this is something can lead him to do what is good, but they would make sure that they would act upon what they narrate and what they hear, what they listen. So there's so many examples in this, and one of which is the Sunnah prayer, the 12 rak'ah Sunnah. The hadith, the narrator of the hadith is, and we mentioned this before, the hadith in Sahih Muslim, when you look at the chain of the narrations, it says that An-Nu'man ibn Salim, he's the first in the Sanad, he narrated the hadith عن عمرو ibn Aus. He said, حدثني عنبسة ibn Abi Sufyan قال سمعت حبيبة رضي الله عنها تقول. So these are the names. عنبسة and عمرو ibn Aus and النعمان ibn Salim. So the last one, عنبسة ibn Abi Sufyan, he said, I heard حبيبة رضي الله عنها, the wife of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, saying, تقول, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول. She said, I heard the messenger صلى الله عليه وسلم saying, من صلى 12 ركعة في يوم وليلة بنى الله له بهن بيتا في الجنة. أو in this narration, بني له بهن بيت في الجنة. That whoever prays 12 rak'ah in every day and night, it will be built for him a house in Jannah. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will build a house for that person in Jannah. 12 rak'ah of Sunnah, 2 before Fajr, 4 before Dhuhr, 2 after Dhuhr, 2 after Maghrib, 2 after Isha. The point of reference here, he said, the hadith, قالت حبيبة حبيبة رضي الله عنها, she said, فما تركتهن منذ سمعتهن من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I never left them since منذ ظرف زمان here. This is from the time I heard them. From the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, never missed them. The 12 rak'ah Sunnah. And عنبسة, the one that narrated the hadith, he says from her, فما تركتهن منذ سمعتهن من حبيبة رضي الله عنها. And myself, I've never left them since, from the time I heard it from حبيبة رضي الله عنها. وقال عمرو بن أوس, he said, ما تركتهن منذ سمعتهن من عنبسة. I never left them once I heard it from عنبسة. وقال النعمان بن سالم, ما تركتهن منذ سمعتهن من عمرو بن أوس. I did not leave them once I heard them from Amr ibn Aus. And we should follow the same way, inshallah ta'ala, and seek help from Allah. And as also mentioned before, these types of things that are done on a daily basis, it requires a lot of mujahada, lots of struggle with oneself. Because أحب الأعمال إلى الله أدومها وإن قل. The most beloved deeds to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are those who done in a consistent manner, even if they are less. So this is something that we would have to, and this is again, this is not a fard, this is not an obligation, this is in the recommended categories of actions, but to make it upon ourselves that whatever benefit that we learn, we should do our best to be upon it. Wallahu a'lam. Also, as some of the examples here is and the hadith is in Al-Bukhari and others. The hadith also, this is again, it's not just an example. When we think about the principles of the deen, La ilaha illallah. What is the meaning of La ilaha illallah? There is no one worthy of worship except Allah. So the person says this, and he says, وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ عَقْد, covenant of al-iman. Then to act upon that speech, that the only one to be worshipped is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the only one to be followed is the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Every single detail in our life, and to warn ourselves with what negates La ilaha illallah, shirk, with all of its categories and types, and to warn ourselves from the bid'ah innovations in the deen with all what that means. And the same thing with everything in our life, whatever we are upon. So when we mention some of these actions, even if it's in the recommended acts, but it shows again how they would make sure that they would apply what they would say. The hadith about making the dhikr before going to sleep, right? And also we heard that before many times, about saying Subhanallah 33 times before you go to sleep, and Alhamdulillah 33 times, and Allahu Akbar 34 times. Who is the narrator of the hadith? Or one of the narrations? Ali radiallahu anhu. And Ali radiallahu anhu, and this is in Bukhari and Muslim, that he said that أن فاطمة رضي الله عنها, Fatima رضي الله عنها, the wife of Ali, the daughter of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, اشتكت ما تلقى من الرحى في يدها. She went and she complained to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام of what she get from the grinder when she used it for the housework, and that affected her hands, made it very rough and things like this. So she asked the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام for a khadim or for a servant, someone that can help her. So to make the hadith short, so the Prophet ﷺ, when he was told about this, he came to them and she requested that from the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ was not there. Aisha radiallahu anha informed the Prophet ﷺ. When he came and he heard this, he went to Ali radiallahu anhu and Fatima radiallahu anil jami'. While وَقَدْ أَخَذْنَا مَضَاجِعَنَا, while we were about to sleep. فذهبنا نقوم, when the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام entered, because that's the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, so we were making ourselves to get up. So the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said على مكانكم, stay the way you are. And then again after what's mentioned, he says ألا أعلمكما, teaching them, should I teach you خيرا مما سألتما, should I teach you something better than what you asked? إذا أخذتما مضاجعكما, if you take yourself in the position of sleep. And this is actually, the dhikr is to be said not when you're sitting in the bed or in the living room before you go to sleep. No, once you lay down, when you're about to go to sleep in your place of the bed, and تكبر الله 34, that you say Allahu Akbar 34 times, وتسبحه 33, and to say Subhanallah 33 times, وتحمده 33, and to say Alhamdulillah 33 times. فهو خير لكم من خادم. It's better for you than a khadim. Better for you than a servant. And actually recently we mentioned this hadith, and it shows that the effect of that is a physical effect in the next day. You would feel that you will be helped inshallah ta'ala physically with matters that you need if you would go to sleep or you would say this before you go to sleep at night. So the point here that is meant here is that Ali radiallahu anhu, he says ما تركته منذ سمعته من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. I've never left it. Mundu, again, once I heard it, from the time I heard this from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every night he would do so. It was said to him, وَلَا لَيْلَةْ صِفِّينَ, even the night of Siffin, the battle of Siffin, there was a fitna that happened at the time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, between Ali radiallahu anhu, Muawiyah and so on. He says, وَلَا لَيْلَةْ صِفِّينَ, not even the night of Siffin. that he did not miss this dhikr radiallahu anhu. So, and this is again the example of making sure that whatever they say aligns perfectly with their actions. When the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when he, as an example also, naha an al-khadf. Al-khadf is when people throw the pebbles with their fingers like this, because he said alayhi salatu wasalam, innaha la tasidu saydan. It doesn't make you get the animal or something. You cannot hit an animal with it. You cannot do it inside in hunting or game or so. ولا تنكأ عدوا, and it won't hurt the enemy. But rather, ولكنها تكسر السن وتفقأ العين. But it might break one's teeth or poke one's eyes when you like the small things that you throw on a target and things like this. So the Prophet ﷺ forbid. But the hadith also that is famous with the incident from Sa'id ibn Jubayr that a relative to Abdullah ibn Mughaffar radiallahu anhu khadaf, he was doing this. So he told him, do not do this, forbidding him from doing it. And he said that the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam naha an al-khadf, he forbade us from this, and he mentioned the reason as the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said. So he did the same thing over again. That means he did not listen to what he said. فقال أحدثك أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم نهى عنه ثم تخذف لا أكلمك أبدا. I'm telling you, the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام forbade that, and you would still do it, I would never speak to you afterwards. Serious matter when it comes to the speech and actions together, and not to take it lightly. Even the Imam of the Deen, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, in his Musnad, that the hadith is close to 30,000 hadith. In Musnad of Imam Ahmad, he says, ما تركت حديثا إلا عملت به. I did not leave a hadith unless I acted upon it. In the Musnad, over close to 30,000 hadith. Even the hadith of Al-Hajjam, that the Prophet ﷺ gave the Hajjam something, the one that make his hijama, so he wanted to apply it, so he went and he made hijama and he gave the person something. So making sure that everything is applied, everything is acted upon. One of the great companions of the Prophet, all of them were like upon this, all of them. And how, if you go on with this, you would find many different narrations that talk about this. For example, Abdullah ibn Umar, and when we talk about Abdullah ibn Umar, one of the things that Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma was famous with is that he was very strictly following the Prophet ﷺ in every matter. But the famous hadith that he said that every man, or the Prophet ﷺ would listen to the dreams that people would say by the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. كان الرجل في حياة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا رأى رؤيا قصها. If a man at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he would see a dream, he would narrate it to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, فَتَمَنَّيْتُ أَنْ أَرَى رُؤْيَا. He said, so I wish that I can see something in my dream that I would say it to the Prophet ﷺ to interpret it for me. فأقصها على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وكنت غلاما شابا, and I was a young man. وكنت أنام في المسجد على عهد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And I used to sleep in the masjid of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. Abdullah ibn Umar, when it's the time of Battle of Badr, he was 13 years old, it was said. And he went to the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he wanted to fight with them. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم turned him back because he's still young. And the Battle of Al-Khandaq, he was 15 or so, so he was very young. It was said that the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام died when he was something like 21, 22, I'm not sure. Very young. So he was young at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and he lived long till he was 80. And all of his life is amazing how what they recorded about Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, something that requires a lecture by itself. But so he said, وَكُنْتُ أَنَامْ, young, not married, so he would sleep in the masjid at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. فَرَأَيْتُ فِي النَّوْمِ كَأَنَّ مَلَكَيْنِ أَخَذَانِ. As he said, I saw in my dream like two angels took me. فذهب بي إلى النار. They took me, these two angels, to the fire. فإذا هي مطوية كطي البئر. He went all the way to the edge of it like the well. وإذا لها قرنان وإذا فيها أناس قد عرفتهم, and there's people that I know in the fire. فجعلت أقول, I kept on saying, this is in the dream, أعوذ بالله من النار. أعوذ بالله, oh Allah, I seek refuge in Allah from the fire. قال فلقينا ملك آخر. We saw another angel. فقال لي لم ترع. He said, do not panic or do not be terrified. He says, فقصصته على حفصة. Hafsa is the sister of Abdullah ibn Umar, the wife of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. I said the dream to her, and she said it to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, نعم الرجل عبد الله. Great man is Abdullah لو كان يصلي من الليل. If he would pray at night, he's such a great man. Right? لو كان, if he كان يصلي, if he was praying during the night. Then the point of the hadith here was mentioned, فَكَانَ بَعْدُ لَا يَنَامُ مِنَ اللَّيْلِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Abdullah ibn Umar, once he heard this, very young, till he died, he would sleep but little during the night because of this incident, because of this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And that's why, Abdullah ibn Umar and how he was, the Prophet ﷺ made a door for women in the masjid. And he says, لو تركنا, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if we would leave this door to the women. So only a special door for the women in the masjid. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma never entered from that door till he died. And what is meant by that is not like everybody else was entering with the women, of course not. But when the masjid is empty, when there's nobody in the masjid, right, it's okay for someone to enter from the women's door to clean. I mean, no woman is coming. So it's feasible, right? It's okay. But he would not even do that. He would not do that. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, if we leave this door for the women. So you can see then those who are at ease with this matter. And many things was mentioned about Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu and how he stayed away from the fitan and things of that nature. And but the point here is how he was very, even he would be so much sad and regretful when he missed something, like the famous hadith of al-janaza, right? The hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that Abdullah ibn Umar used to pray the janaza and leave. He used to think that this is perfectly the sunnah, and that's what's required, and that's it. But when he heard the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that man salla ala janazatin falahu qirat, whoever prays on a janaza, he has one qirat, and whoever prays the janaza and follows it till it's buried, he has 2 qirat. Each qirat is like the mountain of Uhud in rewards. So when Abdullah ibn Umar, he heard this from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, كم فرطنا من قراريط كثيرة. He said, how many qararit we let go, we wasted, because he did not do this, before he did not know that. Once he knew something, he would act upon it. And the hadith of Jabir ibn Sulaym also, which we also mentioned it before, it's a long hadith, but in it, that the Prophet ﷺ, when he said to the Prophet ﷺ, اعهد إلي, tell me something that I would hold fast to, like a covenant. He said, لا تسبن أحدا, do not revile anyone, do not say anything bad to anyone. He says, فما سببت بعده حرا ولا عبدا ولا بعيرا ولا شاة. I did not revile anyone, whether it's a slave or a free man or an animal or a goat or anything. Right? So from that moment, he continued to be like this. Even when Umar radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet ﷺ, he heard Umar swearing by his father. And the Prophet ﷺ forbade them from this. They didn't know. And this is something that used to be in the tongues of the Arabs so much. They would swear by their fathers. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, this is, أنهاكم عن ذلك, do not do that. Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, he never done it, of course, not even narrating it from someone. If someone says this, he would not say so and so said, because he doesn't want to be against of what the Prophet ﷺ said. And this is again the speech and actions. So when it comes to these actions, when it comes to these acts of ibadah, and when we follow the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should be really careful of to exalt the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it should not make us stop saying what is good. We should constantly say what is good. We should learn the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but with the intention that we would apply what we learn. And we should also be warned against acting or doing some actions without the ilm of it, without the knowledge of it. Because otherwise a person would invent things in the religion that it's not part of the deen. And anyone that do anything, they would justify their actions for themselves. So that's why the bid'ah, the innovations in the deen, actions. But is it based on the speech, the haqq, the truth, the wahy, the Quran and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, or based on some general terms that people might argue and say this is this and that, but follow the way of the early generations of Islam to make sure that a person is upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from them. And that's why, for example, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, when he talked about in his book of Al-Adhkar, and to make the dhikr and so on, he says as a wasiyah or as an advice, he says, لا تدع سنة من السنن إلا وقد عملت بها ولو مرة واحدة. Do not leave a sunnah from the sunnah unless you would act upon it, even if it's one time. He says, اعلم أنه ينبغي لمن بلغه شيء. Have the knowledge that it's very important for anyone بلغه شيء, anyone that a message conveyed to him, he reached him matters of knowledge. من فضائل الأعمال, even if it's from the فضائل of الأعمال, the virtues of actions. أن يعمل به ولو مرة واحدة, to act upon it even if it's one time. ليكون من أهله, to be among the people, those who are mentioned in this. ولا ينبغي أن يتركه مطلقا, he should not leave it whatsoever. As the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, he said, إذا أمرتكم بشيء فأتوا منه ما استطعتم. If I command you to do something, do it to the best of your ability. The second thing, so this is one thing. And that's why when we say, to even hear and listen to matters of knowledge, this is an effort. This is work that needs to be done. We should not leave ourselves. Now we're listening, we're hearing all kinds of things. And everybody's speaking. Every single person on the face of earth, you would find them saying things. Iblis is having his own jund and deputies are making sure that the evil is adorned to the people. And arguments and debates and this and that. And a person should stay away from this and protect his heart and protect his ears. And we need to focus on the basics of this deen, the principles of this deen. And to busy ourselves with applying what we know. To apply what we know so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless us and provide for us the things that we do not know. And to take the matter in a gradual way. You would find someone embrace Islam today, or someone repented to Allah a week ago, he was living a totally different life, and then after 1 week he's arguing about things that is unheard of. Why? Because of everybody hears everything and everybody seeing everything. And the statements of Salaf ridwanullah alayhim of how to stay away from sitting with the people of al-bid'ah innovations, to listen, not to listen to what they're saying, protect your heart, save yourself, from all kinds of things, and to be humbled so that we apply what we learn. So therefore, life is very short. We need to take advantage of this life by learning and acting upon what we learn. So to make sure that what we learn is authentic, is right, is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the early generations of Islam were upon it, without getting into these debates on it. Most of it has nothing to do with the evidences from the Quran and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and to follow that. So this is the first wasiyah, to act upon what we hear. And the second thing is, إِذَا أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكَ بِطَاعَةٍ, as he says, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed his favor upon you, to be upon an act of obedience to Allah. وَكُنْتَ مِنْ أَهْلِهَا, and you were among those who were upon it, الْمُوَظِّبِينَ عَلَيْهَا, those who would do it in a consistent manner. But then وَفَاتَتْكَ يَوْمًا, so now you heard about something that is to be done on a daily basis. And one day you missed it. He says, فَحَاوِلْ أَن تَأْتِ بِهَا, then do the best you can that you would make it up. إِن كَانَتْ مِمَّا تُقْضَى, if it's something that can be made qada of, that you can make it up. Like the witr, for example, if someone missed the witr, then he can make it up in the time of duha from after sunrise till before dhuhr, but you add a rak'ah. If you missed something from qiyamul layl, you make it upon yourself that you would pray 5 rak'ah, 7 rak'ah, 11 rak'ah, as the Prophet ﷺ used to do. You missed it, you were tired, then make them up 12 rak'ah in the morning time, or whatever, even if it's 3 rak'ah witr, just to make sure that a person is consistent. So, فَإِنَّ الْعَبْدَ إِذَا اعْتَادَ عَلَى التَّفْوِيتِ وَتَسَاهَلَ فِي ضَيَّعَ الْعَمَلِ. And this is the sadness that we are upon. If a person is used to اعتاد على التفويت, الاعتياد is to get used to something, right? So it becomes your habit. We're supposed to make our habits to do actions, right? To be always used to do things in a consistent manner. But he says here, if someone gets used to miss actions, right? We we are used to miss things. You see the difference? It becomes our norm is that we miss things. Today I miss this, and tomorrow I miss the same thing. The same, and the other action also. The norm is that it's missed. What happens to a person when he's like this? He says, فإنه فإن العبد إذا اعتاد على التفويت وتساهل فيه, and he become at ease, because once and after some time it becomes easy for him to miss. ضيع العمل. He would ruin his actions. The actions becomes wasted like this. So this is something that shows the benefit of making sure that things to be done and things to be not to be missed, and if it's missed, then to make it up. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he would make up whatever he would miss from the sunnah, and even from the 12 rak'ah sunnah and so on. And if this is done in these actions, which is not small, how about the foundation of the deen? We should not belittle that. This is the most important thing that we need to be upon, and to act upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. So we'll stop here inshallah ta'ala, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make us among those who truly follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and to protect us from the evil within oneself, from having this inconsistency between the speech and actions. And that's it inshallah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, baraka Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.